What's the most fricked up thing you've seen someone do at work and still not get fired? Sleep for 3 hours. I was brand new on the job, corporate thing, and my new co-worker came up to me on a weekend shift and said, "I was up really late last night. I'm gonna go lay down for a few minutes." 3 hours later, he woke up and came out to work again, without any measure of apology. In the interim, one of the people we worked for found him asleep and told my boss. He got a warning. Close second being a co-worker that hacked the company's network, using the term somewhat loosely, to get an internet access password we weren't allowed to have. Would have gotten away with it if he hadn't also changed their file structure to have folder names like, "Frick you, I want internet access." He also got a warning. Coworker closing early, not 5-10 minutes early, but nearly 2 hours. The reason was she just didn't feel like working. I've seen more than 0 nurses mistreat patients, so I've seen too many. Unfortunately, unless it's flagrant and there's enough eyewitnesses, and as long as it's on old people or severely mentally ill people who have little to no family support, nobody gives a flying crap. Nurse got caught with her hand in the sharps bin and it still took months to prove she was stealing narcs. I work in the healthcare field. Had one co-worker who never wasted his narcotics properly with a witness. He would just have them signed out solo and say, "Oh yeah, patient. Didn't want them so I disposed of it with 0 verification," and had a lot of liquid narcotics whose counts suddenly went mysteriously off after he'd been on shift. Somehow he did not get fired or even investigated. He wound up quitting after just a few months. Good riddance. This unfortunately is way too common. At my last job they found a nurse dead in the bathroom from an overdose. Whilst working at a local hospital, a nursing student snorting a line of whatever, in scrubs, in a hospital bathroom, to post on Snapchat, or the 2 housekeepers who engaged in a fist fight on an elevator, only to continue said fight as they arrived at their destination. Woman screaming at the supervisor at the call center when people were on the phones, cursing saying she would beat him up because he gave her too many leads. She just wanted the Glengarry leads, not this Glen Ross balls. I didn't catch the person in action, but I was the HR consultant, so I did all of the new hire processing. Lady came in shaking like crazy, had to leave the processing to go home and get her id. Came back high AF. 2 weeks go by and she just stops showing up for her shifts. We also found used needles in the bathroom. She didn't die or anything. We checked in with her, but it's still so freaking sad. But yay, TLDR. Lady shot up at work and got away with it. I used to work in a bar. One of the waiters, who was wearing an apron, would pull his nutsack out of his zipper and walk around lifting his apron, and anyone and everyone that worked there, the customers never knew his balls were flapping in the breeze as he took their order. I worked from home at my last job and my co-worker would sometimes just not log in until like 11 AM and would just completely skip meetings that she was supposed to run. One time she missed a meeting with our boss and my boss just goes, "Well, I bet she was up late working so is coming in late." She was supposed to run. That's the bad part right there. Had 8 servers delivered very late one day and left outside the data center. Everything in boxes on a pallet. Janitor thinks it's trash, takes all of them to the trash compactor and crushes them. Each box weighed 80 plus lbs. They weren't ours but a company we contracted with. We had to buy all new servers and the guy didn't even get to write up. He had a family member on the board. Not mine, but something an old buddy of mine did 15 plus years ago. He worked for a really big gaming company that was just about to ship a major title. Like, major. Because of beta testing, there was code in the game that would disable the beta copies the day after the game officially dropped. His job was to make sure that code was removed before they burned all of the official CDs for the game's release. Guess who forgot to remove the code? The company had already burned tens of thousands, maybe more, of game discs and boxed them up for shipment before my buddy realized his mistake and came clean to his boss. They had to reburn, replace, and rebox every copy of the game and do it in time to meet the launch date. Cost a lot of people a lot of extra time and grief, but ultimately, my buddy got to keep his job. For those interested, the company was Bethesda Softworks and I believe the game was Morrowind. Their offices were in Rockville, MD at the time, and I used to go meet my friend over there for lunch every couple of weeks. If I recall correctly, he was in charge of coding the sky effects for the game. Well, that and removing the code that would brick the game after release. I wouldn't fire him. Keeping him on sends an incredibly strong signal to everyone that the way to handle a mistake is to admit it. That's priceless. Our department went for a team building overnight stay abroad. The next day when we were supposed to meet at the airport, he was nowhere to be found. His phone was off. Bosses rang the hospitals. Missing persons report. You name it. A week later the bosses went back to the country to find him again. Nothing. Wife and child hadn't heard anything. Week later he turns up for work like nothing happened. He had decided to jump on an earlier flight to Thailand for a week's holiday without telling a soul. Couple of meetings with the bosses. Never mentioned again. Guess his wife made him feel it, but that was never disclosed. There is essentially no way he didn't go there for freaky adult stuff. A guy who works at a local grocery store would get caught masturbating at work with the bathroom stall door open. He was caught so much that he was eventually relocated to the gas station. And he has a serious attitude problem because he thinks that it's because he's overweight. It's not because you're chubby, it's because of your chub. I work in the office of a major retailer. I have a co-worker who's made several negligent blunders that have costed the company millions in lost sales. He has regularly failed to monitor the flow of advertised goods until it is too late to react. Lost sales. He once decided that if someone he works with freaks up, it isn't his problem to fix it. He wouldn't even tell them about it so they could fix it. Of course, it quite literally is his problem to fix it. This caused lots of failed shipments and flows that, again, caused lost sales. He failed to monitor inventory levels on regular stock items. Sales obviously spiked during Christmas time, which has caused him to run out on half his inventory and thus lose sales. As of yet, he still hasn't fully normalized all of it. To my knowledge, he's only recently gotten a formal reprimand for that last one. How it took so long is beyond me. Meanwhile, retail floor employees are getting berated for not opening enough members' accounts in 2 weeks. Cracked the casing of the most expensive piece of equipment in the lab by headbutting it because he had anger issues. He was team leader for that section. Bonus points. He looked a lot like Phil Mitchell. Co-worker once asked me if I would help him Photoshop a letter of recommendation before an interview. This man has an MD. He has an MD, or someone helped him Photoshop his diploma to say he's got an MD. I wouldn't say fricked up, but I work closely with the federal government, and the number of people just hanging around until retirement, doing jobs that have been obsolete for 20 years, is remarkable. There's a dude I know whose only job is to scan things, like scan paper into PDFs. He's a federal employee being paid $50,000 in. Literally do this job. As part of my degree I must work in a place my college chooses for a semester, but still pay college fees. I scan all day, do nothing else. I'm replacing a man who retired last year who was on 50,000 euros. I take a total of 2 hours off a day for breaks and have been told I am much more efficient than the last guy. Worked at Applebee's and this one server had decided she had enough of the bulls. She walked out in the middle of her shift, while she still had tables. Showed up the next day like nothing happened, and nothing did happen. She didn't get fired. She didn't get written up. She didn't get warned. She left everyone, including customers, high and dry as to where she was. I eventually grew to get along very well with her. That crap blew my mind though. My manager always showed up high and drunk at work, then would take breaks to smoke weed and buy vodka at the nearest sack. And he pretty much hit on every girl that was working, but obviously nothing happened to him cause he was the manager. SAC equals liquor store in Quebec, for those curious. Some bozo made me a restaurant manager when I was 21. Very frequently after hours we drank from the bar and had late night cook-offs. Sounds like you improved staff morale and encouraged camaraderie in your staff. I'm leaving the job partially for this reason. My manager speaks to all the employees like they are idiots, and despite multiple HR reports she still works here, talks down to people and belittles them, makes decisions and tells people to do things just to throw her weight around, and rather than letting people take sick days she makes them take it as personal days. Oh, also when people try to call out when they are legitimately sick she will try to make them feel bad so they won't call out and guilt trip them. And if someone actually calls out she would treat them like crap the day after as payment for calling out sick, like how dare you get sick lol. What an absolute idiot. The point of sick days is not do you feel sick but will you get everyone else sick, which has a much higher economic impact. Your manager is garbage. This guy at the DQ I worked at did all sorts of crazy crap. He pulled my hair then screamed at me. He pushed an underage kid with a lot of force. He called a 15-year-old girl a nice piece of butt. This dude was 34. He threatened to kill his ex's dogs as well. I can probably think of more or expand on this stuff if anyone is interested. This guy came to us from Illinois because he started dating one of the managers at my location. He had been through the prison system for the last decade or so. Highlights are assault, arson on a car, and arson on a home. After he finally left, he would keep calling the store and hang up if anyone other than his ex answered the phone. He would come in and just stare at everyone that worked there. It got so bad that the GM started carrying a gun to work. I would watch him through the security cameras and he would nonchalantly knock things off of counters and stuff. Just make someone else clean up his messes like it was nothing. He was particularly creepy towards little boys that were with their mothers. He would compliment the boys' moms to the kids and tell them that they needed to protect her. All in all, he was one fricked walnut. Was out to lunch with 3 co-workers. Collectively, there are 2 males and 2 females. We're all attorneys. BTW. One of the males is very into the other woman. She is also a hijab wearing Muslim woman. The male co-worker proceeds to get up from eating and starts to massage female co-worker's head. Her hijab starts to fall off. We all tell him to stop. He explained that he was getting the brain spiders off. I was mortified. She was. So was the other male. But he continued working there. Wisconsin. Pretty nice hotel. Our room service chef. I get in for the night, and my co-worker is fielding a call of a very loud guest. I can tell it is going bad. Very bad. He hangs up, looks down in sadness for a bit, gets up and slowly walks to the kitchen. His next words were burnt into my head. Cook's name. Can I see your hand? Cook looks down and notices his band-aid is missing, and made its way into a pizza that went up to a customer. He said his wife had it in her mouth. No, not fired. That's why catering bandages are bright blue, easier to see. Had a guy in our collections department show up drunk and barefoot at a customer's apartment at 3 AM, screaming and beating on the guy's door. Dude's payment for the month was calmed, but the employee didn't get so much as a write-up. My grandfather was a computer technician at my dad's school when he was growing up. The man had no experience with computers since they were still kinda the new thing. This madlad interviews, gets the job by spouting out buzzwords, and at the end of the interview is like, hey, I'm a bit unfamiliar with this particular system. Could I have the manual to look over before I start? They're like, yeah, whatever. Guy aggressively reads this manual until he is an expert and knows everything about this computer. He held the job for years. He was probably just as qualified as anybody else in his area, but with the will to learn. I work with a guy who claims to be a well-paid, well-traveled comedian. Problem is he is not funny, never performed in our state. He claims to be famous in Arizona and California. He walks with a club foot and claims to be a former Marine. We hired numerous veterans and he avoids them. Maybe you're looking at the big venues. He's probably big in the club circuit. I'm here all week, folks. The car dealership I worked at had an automated garage door that opened really fast and closed really fast. Because the shop had AC and heat, so they didn't want to waste either. 2 mechanics go up to the door. One of them stands under the door and proceeds to instruct the other one to push the manual override close button so that it would close on his head. He wanted to see what it would feel like. He ended up breaking the motor and costing the shop $15,000 plus whatever his medical bills he may have procured. I'm not really sure. Not fired. I had a coworker who sat down across from our supervisor, explicitly refused to do his job, then dared the supervisor to fire him. Most incredible meeting I've ever witnessed. He was not fired and quit on his own for a new job within a month or so. I knew a guy whose wife worked at a place called Happy Joe's Pizza. He just got out of prison after 26 years. He put a fire poker through him head's chest and killed him. His wife would let him in when they closed and they would frick on the make table, and he said he would just shoot his load all over the meats and cheese regularly for 2 years. Glad I lived on the other side of town. Worked in a restaurant. Cook came in after his shift blackout drunk and high on coke. He was belligerent and upset for no clear reason. He grabbed a 10-inch serrated bread knife from the counter and was swinging it around. Eventually he picked someone specific to go after and started to move towards him and past me. One of the guys was moving in from behind to grab him, so myself and another guy grabbed his knife arm and pinned it to the counter at the same time that the dude directly behind him put him in a headlock. We took the knife and threw him towards the door and told him to get the frick out. No one called the cops. I called the owner. He was not fired and worked his shift the next day. Back when I was in grad school, there were a lot of older faculty who really hadn't done anything for years. No research, no grad students, maybe taught one, or no, very specialized class. They came into the department whenever, sat around and drank coffee and chit-chatted, maybe typed a bit on the computer, and went home. They also had the largest offices. They couldn't be fired nor forced to retire. Meanwhile, all the new faculty were running themselves ragged trying to get tenured. I was a sales manager, salaried with our yearly bonus mainly based on making budget. Another manager whose district was south of mine was about 25k short of making his numbers for the year, so he places an order for a large corporate customer, several pallets worth of products weighing well over a ton, and has it shipped to a storage facility, all without the customer knowing, let alone agreeing to it. After the new year he has it returned for credit, but not before the customer is invoiced and raises heck over it, yet he keeps his job, makes his number and gets his bonus. All because he kept his nose shoved so far up the regional manager's butt, who was a colossal douchebag himself. So glad I'm no longer with that cluster frick of an outfit. My boss told a pregnant co-worker after she denied his advances, he was married too, that he was going to do what the sperm donor should have done and kick her in the stomach. Multiple witnesses attested to him saying this, including me. Nada. Come to find out it was because they were closing the business anyways, so they couldn't be assed. I used to work in instrument manufacturing. There were these tiny heater parts that needed to be glued together. Well, one of the employees, sweetest lady, was new to that particular station that involved the heater part. All of her heaters kept leaking. Nobody knew why. They assumed that it was faulty parts. I had worked at that station before her and I came over to take a look. She was gluing the parts wrong. She was placing the heavier part on the bottom and the lighter part in top. To get a good seal, you obviously place the heavy part on top when you lay it to dry. Well, they got the engineers over to take a look. They told me I was wrong because that's not in the instruction booklet. I told them I had been building these for months and never had any problems, and that they might want to consider changing it in the manual because it seems to be common sense. They continued to tell me I was wrong because God forbid they take the advice of a young woman. This one engineer was a gender-based retard and he was in charge of this problem. They continued to trash thousands of dollars worth of perfectly good parts, and this guy continued to blame the manufacturer of the parts. Sometimes I would work weekends with my boss. I asked him if I could please just work on one batch to prove I was right. He let me, and guess what? No leaking. My boss tells the higher ups and the instructions are changed. I get zero acknowledgement in solving the case. Since thousands of dollars in product have been wasted, someone needs to take a hit. And that someone was the kind little older woman who had only been doing what the engineer told her to do. The person who should have been fired was that jerk who didn't want to listen to me. There was this guy, Habib, who worked at Spirit Halloween the year I worked there, and he was sort of a legend to me, because I somehow worked the entire season and only saw him on my last day. He would do these unfathomably stupid things that made a ton more work for everyone else, and at first it ticked me off. But I came to realize it was sort of just who he was, or it was how he worked, and the stories really grew upon. Things like, our manager gave him a huge carton of wigs to put away, and rather than putting them in the wig section, he spread them throughout the entire store, which was considerably more work. When confronted, he denied he'd done this, then asked how the manager could know it was him. The stories went on and on. Maybe you'd have to be in that working environment to know why things like this were so funny. We had some of the absolute weirdest people working there, and the customers were always completely normal and understanding. The manager hated kids, and strongly disliked Halloween, so she was always pretty grumpy. It's hard to explain. Working at Spirit Halloween seems wild. My friend used to work at one, but he left after catching his boss smoking M in the store. Repeatedly sleep. Not like a 2-minute doze. I'm talking hours. Has been caught multiple times. Was even filmed twice by a new hire. Union won't let him be touched, not even a suspension. Our union rep walked into my cube to talk to a guy who was asleep. Instead of waking him up or anything, he just quietly said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and walked off to do whatever it was that he did. Don't sleep at your desk is right in the union rules. Come on. Glad I don't work there anymore. Whenever the second assistant manager would get pee with an employee, which was fairly often, he'd talk a lot of crap about that employee to other workers and managers and say things like, "I'm gonna punch his freaking face in." He never did. He was all talk, but a person of his position saying the things he did about people. It was amazing he didn't get fired. Used to work at a federal research lab. We had a guy who used to come to work and be pee off about whatever. He'd get mad the printer wasn't working. He'd be mad someone didn't water the research plots right. He'd be mad about politics. You name it. He used to say, and pantomime with his finger, that he was going to shoot, kill stuff or people that were bugging him. That's a bit weird by itself, but the bigger issue was he would also routinely drive to work with a loaded .45 on the front passenger seat of his car. He'd tell people he had his gun in his car and he was going to get it one of these days when he'd had enough. It was actually illegal to bring a firearm onto the premises, at least at our lab it was, and I reported it to our HR person after a few times. I was starting to get worried he might actually do it. Turns out, as I'm talking to the HR person, I'm the third person to complain about his bringing a weapon to work and threatening to shoot people in the last few months. Nothing ever happened, other than my boss and I actually made up an escape plan for when Jerry went nuts and started shooting up the place. I work in IT. We found a guy with a complete drive of pornography. HR investigated it. They never even contacted the offending employee and just had us remove it from the network. He got no discipline. We do community-based skills for children with severe emotional disturbances. Many of these kids are also DCS involved. A co-worker of mine told a 4-year-old with a severe emotional disturbance to stop being a little bee or your parents won't ever get clean for you. She said it because she was screaming and crying in the car. I know it sucks, but you literally signed up for this. This happened to at least 2 other clients of hers that I know of. She was given a performance improvement plan. I work retail. There's a story in my company that someone at a different location than the one I work at once completely and utterly failed to close properly. They left the safe open, the alarm off, and the door unlocked. Guess what? All of the cash in the safe was gone the next morning. No one was fired. Not seen but heard. My grandfather had died 3 days prior and we had him cremated at the time, and one of my co-workers said, "I bet every time you hear the song Dust in the Wind you think of your dead grandfather." Let me tell you, I've never came closer to hitting someone than I did in that moment. That's funny to me, but still fricked up in the moment. While working at an utilities brokerage as a sales rep call center agent, I worked with this girl whose work for the day would literally just email our boss at the end of the day to let him know what I had done that day. Our boss lived and worked in Thailand, so he wasn't exactly able to oversee us with complete accuracy, but we were supposed to email in at the end of the day with a report of what we had done, and she asked me if she could write up the day for the 2 of us, which I thought was a little odd, but guessed she was just trying to be nice. Eventually she stopped telling him it was me doing the work and I lost my job because she took all the credit. I hated that job. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.